Hi, today I'm going to show you how to make a couple of fuzzy ducks from our fuzzy duck needle felting kit. Inside you'll find a little postcard with all our details on and all the lovely soft natural merino wool that you need to make the kit. You have got corn, pumpkin, mocha, mink and eggshell. Also there is some cotton covered wire, and in the little envelope is your two needles. You've got a triangular needle and a reverse needle, and also the eye pins that you need. So you'll also find your photographic step-by-step instruction cards. It's all written and photographed steps. There are four instruction sheets here. The last one has got some templates on which will help you make the shapes, and also just a card that covers the basics of needle felting. To make your fuzzy ducks, first you need to divide the yellow wool in half. The easiest way to do this is unravel it and fold it in half, finding the centre. And then holding your hands about shoulder width apart, gently pull and the fibres should divide, giving you two even pieces of wool. Wrap one round your hand and pop it to one side for later. This is for your second duck. Divide the piece of wool by splitting it lengthways, about a 2 centimetre strip off the side, taking it all the way down the length of the wool. And wrap this piece of wool around your hand like before and pop that on the side later for wings and padding and bits and bobs like that. The remaining piece of wool you need to divide into 1/3, 2/3. Do this again, just estimate where that is and hold it gently in your hands and pull apart, and you'll end up with two pieces, one for the head and one for the body. Take the smaller piece and wrap it tightly around your finger, keeping the fibres nice and smooth. Imagine you're wrapping a bandage around your finger. Keep wrapping until the end, smoothing the last few little fibres in, which will help keep it together. And then you want to gently pull it off your finger, keeping it like a little marshmallow, and pop it on your sponge. You're ready to begin stabbing. Hold the needle firmly and begin stabbing the ball evenly all over. Keep rotating it around because you want a nice even shape, and the fibres will soon start to knit together. Turn the ball onto its side and you can begin rounding off one of the ends. Do this by stabbing from the top down over the edge of the ball, rotating it all the time because you want a nice even shape, pushing the fibres in with your needle as you go. It'll take a little while, but keep repeating this and turning it and you'll soon have a nice domed end. When you're happy with the shape, turn the ball onto its end and holding onto the unfelted fibres, stab down into the ball. Keep rotating and stabbing evenly. You're creating the underside of the head and neck of the duck. Keep stabbing and rotating the ball until you're happy with the shape. You can always reshape it a little once it's on the body, so don't worry if it's not quite perfect just yet. So now we're going to make the body of the duck. So if you take the larger part of the 2/3 of length of wool that you took off earlier and wrap that round, say 2 or 3 fingers, we're going to make a nice large ball. Keep the fibres nice and smooth as you did before. Just keep wrapping and smoothing those fibres round. And then just ease the ball off your fingers and pop it on your mat. So you can begin stabbing like you did before. Keep the ball moving, keep it nice and even. Don't stab repeatedly in any one spot. Keep rotating that ball round because we're making a 3-dimensional shape. When you're happy it's stuck together, you can turn it onto its side. We're going to round off that one end. Same as we did with the top of the head. Just tuck in any loose fibres. This will take a good 5-10 minutes. You want the ball to be firm but not overly hard. So just keep working nice and evenly all around the shape. If you're unsure at all about the shape and size that you're trying to achieve, if you go to the end of your instructions, you'll find there's some handy templates which are a good guide to what you're trying to achieve. Obviously every model's different, so they're a guide rather than a rule. So when you're happy with that end, we're going to turn it over and we're going to work on the other side. And this time we're going to try and make more of like an egg shape. So you want to stab a little bit more firmly into that one end and taper that end to more of a little point. When you're ready, take the head and stretch out the unfelted fibres, and you're going to pop it over the more pointy end of the body shape, and then you can begin to stab down firmly from the head down into the body. Work evenly all the way round so it's attached firmly from all sides. And when you're happy that it's not going to fall off, you can turn it over and stab down from the body back up into the head. This ensures the fibres are really nicely knitted together and the two shapes are nicely bonded together. From the spare piece of wool you put aside earlier, tease off some tiny tufts of wool with your fingers and make some little pads that you can place over the join of the head and the neck, and felt this in gently just to disguise that little line. To gauge how much wool you'll need for the tail, wrap the wool around your finger 2 or 3 times and then pull off that length, and then you can re-wrap it around your finger again to make a small ball. So take that little ball of wool, and you want to look at your model and just work out which is going to be the front and which is going to be the back of the bird, and then just pop the little ball of wool at the base and stab it gently in place. Work all around the edges of the ball just to make sure it's attached, and then you can begin to use your needle just to shape that ball. You can work all over, you can flatten it down a little bit, but you want to push it up and make it a nice little pert little tail. Make sure you rotate your bird and look at it from all different angles. Don't worry if it looks a little bit rough, because we can always add small pads of wool to build it out and to soften that shape. Make some more little tufts of wool, really tough them up in your fingers, and then place them over the joins from between the tail and the body. Just work them gently in. You can always add a little bit more if there's some dents or holes, or you can just use them to blend out any sort of lines. When you're making the little pads of wool to use for blending, the more you tuft up the fibres, the smoother finish you're going to get, because you're going to have broken up those hard lines within the wool. So once your tail is attached and blended, you just want to make sure the tail tips up a little bit. So if you work from underneath with a needle and just push it up to give it a little jaunty angle. This is a good opportunity to look at the overall shape of your bird and just work over it, getting rid of any lumps or bumps, or adding any more little pads of wool where there might be any little dents or lines or joins. As a rough guide, I wrap the wool 2 or 3 times around my fingers to give me an idea of how much wool for the wings. You want about 20 centimetres long, and pull 2 pieces off to make the 2 wings. Then wrap one of the pieces around your finger, keeping the fibres nice and smooth, but leave the end tufty. Don't wrap it round, leave it loose, because that's going to help you attach it to the bird at the end. And then you want to pop it onto your sponge and begin stabbing into the sponge, through the wool into the sponge. Work up and down the wool fibres all the way up to the end. Don't worry, the wool will spread out a little bit at this point, but we're going to roll it in and stab through just to create the shape that we want. Just fold over any edges, pull the edges in, and then just work along the line of the wing. Peel the wool off your mat and turn it over and work on the other side, just folding it into the width you think you're going to need. It might be an idea at this stage, once the wool's felted slightly, just to hold it up against your model so you can just gauge that you're working to the right size. It'll give you a good idea of shape as well that you might need. And keep turning it over and working on from all angles. And once you've got the width of it right, you can start working from the side to create a little sort of curved shape, as if the wing's sort of tapering up slightly. So you're coming in slightly more from a horizontal angle. Still coming in and out at the same direction, but a little bit more horizontally. Just work around the edges, creating a nice smooth shape. So once you're happy with the shape of that wing, you need to make a matching one for the other side. So take the other piece of wool that you pulled off and wrap that around your finger as you did before, and then pop it on your mat and flat felt it into the same shape. You just need to make sure you've got a pair that one goes one way and one goes the other. When your wings are made, you can position them onto your bird to make sure that they are roughly in the right place. And those loose fibres that you left are going to be used just to attach and blend in around the front of the body, because you want the wing attached, but you want the end of the tip of the wing to be loose, sort of flappy. So once you've got both wings attached, you might want to just add a few pads of wool just to blend out any edges that you might have. For the beak, take a thin strip of orange wool, it's about around 2 centimetres wide, and wrap it carefully around the shaft of your needle. Just hold one end and then, keeping the wool fibres smooth, wrap it around, smooth it off, and then slide it down the needle onto your sponge. And then you can begin stabbing gently. Keep rotating the ball until the fibres start to felt together. Once you can pick your little ball up without it unravelling, this is a good point to just check against your model to make sure it's the right size, whether it's too big or small. And you can either add some wool or you could remake it if needs be. You're actually looking to make a little wedge shape here with a nice rounded tip. And then if you work repeatedly into the top of the beak, it should create a nice little curve in the beak, so it'll look as if it's sort of tipping up slightly. When you're happy with the shape of the beak, you can position it on your model. It sits slightly lower on the face. And when you're happy with the position, if you just hold it firmly, pop your model onto your sponge and then stab in through the beak into its head and work all the way around, just around the edges of the beak. It should attach quite quickly. You can readjust it if necessary. And then just work in from all angles until you're happy that it's firmly attached. Once you're happy that the beak's nice and secure, tuft up some tiny little wisps of wool. You don't really need much. And just place them around the edge of the beak, so where the beak joins the face. And this just softens the line and makes the beak look a little less stuck on, I guess. And just work all the way around the edge, just adding lots of tiny little patches and underneath until you're happy with the look of his face. Now's the time to add the eyes to your model. Just check a rough positioning and then take your needle and push it really deep into the model, out in one side, out the other. What you want to do is make a little guide hole for the little pin to go in. So then you just pop the pin of the eye in the hole that was left by the needle and just give it a little push in. If you're not happy, you can always change the position, take them out and put them back in again. It doesn't affect the model at all. And then obviously add the second eye on the other side, doing the same thing. You want to make sure you're putting the pin of the eye in at the same angle as the needle went in, otherwise it'll be a real struggle to get it in. The positioning of the eyes do actually change the character of the model, so you might want to have a couple of goes at getting them right. Once you do, and they're in, what's a nice thing to do is to add a little bit of definition around the edge of the eye. So if you tuft up some of the very sort of cream eggshell coloured wool, just place it directly, completely over the top of the eye, and then use the tip of your needle just to guide and feel the edge of the eye. The eye will actually appear through the wool, and you can shape it into a tiny little almond shape. And as you stab around the eye ball, it will actually create a bit of a socket which will help define the face. Once you're happy with the position of the eyes, it's a good idea just to carefully take the eye out and pop a tiny bit of PVA glue on the stem and slide it back in. That way it just secures the eye and just stops it falling out if it's been handled at all. Then you want to just tuft up a little bit more of the eggshell wool and just make a little pale patch on the underneath of your duck. This just adds a little bit of detail, and when you reverse felt it just starts to pull through different colours, which makes a nice effect on his feathers. Just make sure that's nice and evenly felted in. Divide the piece of wire in half and then place one end at the end of a ruler and mark off at 6 centimetres and then fold in half. Place that fold at the beginning of the ruler and then fold up at 1 centimetre, rotate 45 degrees and then bend the long piece back again at 2 centimetres. And then fold in and out 3 times. And you're making the 3 toes here, so they're all the same length. And you've got a sort of a thumbs up hand, it looks a bit like. There is a guide to this shape at the end of your instructions if you need help. You then want to bend the short piece up at 90 degrees, open the toes out to make a little foot, and then bend the longer piece of wire up at 45 degrees and wrap round the other piece. So it should look like a little foot with 3 toes at the front, a little toe at the back, and then the leg going up. So we're going to start with the little back toe and wrap the feet. So you want to take a tiny little strip of orange wool, and you're going to loop that into the back of the toe. Just wrap it underneath the wire, pull it through. So you've got a little loop, just give it a little pinch to hold it in place. Once it's in there, you're just going to twist the wire round just to trap that end of the wire of the wool. Now this is a little fiddly bit. You're going to wrap the wool round the wire back on itself. Just keep wrapping over, keeping it nice and smooth. And once you come to the end by the leg, you take that wool round and up the leg just to finish it off and take it out the way. You could even add a little bit of PVA glue at this point if you wanted, just to help you keep the wool in place and stop it unravelling, or if it's getting a little bit fluffy. So you can do the same with all the other 3 toes. You want to take another piece of wool off and just open up the wire and just slip that wool in. Sort of fold it over it halfway. Just pinch the toe back together again. Give Give it a little twist. And then carefully wrap that wool around the toe. And when you get to the end, go back up the leg. If you're really struggling with this, it doesn't have to be incredibly neat, because what we're going to do, we're going to make some little pads to make webbed feet. So a lot of this wrapping is going to be hidden, but it does add a really nice definition to the toes on the feet. So it's worth having a go. You can always take it apart and redo it again if you're finding it tricky. Once you've got all the toes wrapped, you want to just do one last wrap going up the leg to add a little bit of strength and thickness to the leg. So again, you do the same thing. You just take a piece of the wool. You've already got a little bit of wool on there where you've taken it up the end, so it should grip slightly better. And then just start at the bottom and wrap it around. Try not to twist it, try and keep it nice and smooth. And take the wool up the leg to make it thicker. You want to go up maybe about 2 inches. You can always unwrap it and start again if you're finding it's not how you want it. I'd wrap the leg maybe 2 or 3 times just so you get a slightly thicker, chunkier leg than the foot. Just gives it a bit of stability when we're trying to make the model stand. So once you're happy that the leg is nice and even and smooth and good shape, obviously you need to make a second one so he has 2 legs. So repeat all that to make another one. So now you've made the wire armature for the feet and the legs. We're just going to make some little pads to make some webbing on the bottom of his feet. So you want to pull off 2 small pieces of wool. You don't need an awful lot here, otherwise his feet will be too chunky. You want to tough them up and make them nice and rough and broken up before we start flat felting onto your sponge. So once you've got 2 tufty little pads of wool, put one to one side and you can start flat felting the wool. So you're stabbing in and out in the same direction, straight down into the mat, so that it sort of almost sticks to the mat. Then you just want to peel it off and turn it over. We're going to repeat this process 3 or 4 times until the wool starts to become a little bit felted and a little bit more handleable. Once you can handle the wool and it's got a little bit of structure to it, you can start creating a little triangle for the shape of the webbed foot. Just draw the sides in and just tuck them in and stab along the edges with the needle. Keep turning it over so that it's stabbed from both sides. At this point, you want to get your little foot and just check that it's the right sort of size. Use it as a little guide or a template to work out how big the foot webbing is going to be, and just fold over and make a nice neat little triangle. When you've made your little triangle, just take your duck's foot and just check that it's good size. It should be slightly bigger than the outline of the feet that you've made. And then you want to repeat this process and you want to make a second triangle. This one doesn't need to be as big. It's only going to go on the top. So it'll stop just by the ankle almost. So you just want to fold it in so you get a little rough triangle. And one's going to go on the top of the foot and one's going to go underneath, and we're going to sandwich them together. If you find you've put too much wool on and you feel like they're going to be a bit too chunky, you can always start this again. There's plenty of wool there to use. So you want to take the bigger triangle and pop the foot on the top. You can always adjust the toes if they're too splayed out or not splayed out enough. And then pop the smaller triangle on the top. And we're going to stab down into the wool in between the toes. So just be careful, take it easy and gently at the time, bit at a time. Just working a little triangle in between each of the toes, working round, and this will join the top layer to the bottom. What you want is to keep that definition between the toes. So it will take a little while for the feet to become bonded together, but keep working on it, keep turning and moving it over. Make sure you turn the foot right over and work from the underneath as well. If it's looking a little bit rough around the edges, you can fold the sides in and work along the sides. And if you have any bits of the toe that are sticking out slightly, you can always add an extra little pad of wool, tuft up some wool and just add that on to disguise anything that's sticking out. But just keep working on them until they're nice and bonded together. When they're nice and flat, you can start creating the webbed effect on the feet. So where there's a gap between the toes, just coming in from the side slightly horizontally, you want to stab in and push those fibres in to create a nice smooth curve. So once you've made both of your feet, you want to join the legs together. So we do this by twisting the two together at the top. The legs need to be a couple of inches long. You may have a bit of wire sticking out at the top that you haven't covered. You can either cut this off or bend it over. Either way, it's going to be hidden inside the duck's body, so don't worry too much. So you want to put the legs to one side, and then you want to cut a slit about 1 inch wide in the base of your model. You need some nice sharp scissors to do this. Like I said, about 1 inch wide, but you do need to go in a little bit inside the body of the model because the legs are going to be pushed up inside. Just to check at this point that the legs are pushed far enough inside the model, just stand him up and just make sure his legs are the right length. When you're happy, you can take some little tufts and pads of wool and just fill in the hole and the gap in between his legs and make sure all that's nice and neatly covered. Just splay the legs out a little bit and felt it in around them. So once that's firmly felted, you can just close his legs together a little bit, and you could add a little pads of wool around the outside of his legs to disguise where they've joined his body. Just add some little pads and felt them in neatly. Just to finish the underside of your duck, you can just put another tuft of the eggshell wool between his legs and up towards his tail. This just adds a nice little gradient of colour. So when you're using your reverse needle, you get nice different textures and colours of wool coming through. So then you just want to make sure your duck stands up nicely. You might just want to move the legs about and make sure he's nicely balanced. So finally, we just want to use the green-tipped needle in your kit. This is a reverse needle, so rather than the barbs going inwards, they go out the other way. So when you stab in, you're going to be able to pull tufts, really fine tufts of the wool out. And this is how we get that lovely fluffy texture on his feathers. It takes a little bit of getting used to. It can feel a little bit sticky, but just keep at it. When you're working on the edges of the wings, just make sure you hold the wing down so you don't end up like pulling it out. The fibres are going to be longer than you probably want for the finished effect, so don't worry, but just work all the way over him, and then you can give him a lovely little trim. You can make him as neat or as fluffy as you like at this point. This is the fun bit. Make sure you work all over. You can do all down his back, underneath his bottom, and especially on top of his head. You can give him a nice little funky little hairstyle if you like. And then you can give him a final little spruce up with the tip of your needle just to fluff up any fibres that might have got flattened. At this point you might want to just hold his feet so to not squash all his fluff. And there you have him, a lovely little fuzzy duck. So once you've finished making your little yellow fuzzy duckling, you can make him a little friend, a little mallard duckling. There's enough wool left over to make him. He's made exactly the same way as the first one. So his head, body and wings are all made the same. But when you come to the wings, you just start adding some little tufts of dark brown and cream wool. Just tuft up the fibres and add them to the wings, just to add a little bit of texture and colour to them. You add them to the body in the same way too. Spread out the wool fibres from the tufted ends at the front and just blend them over his tummy. To make the beak, instead of using the orange wool, you use the eggshell wool. It's made exactly the same way. And then once you've got the shape right, you just add a top layer of the brown, just tuft off some wool fibres and just make a layer of dark brown just halfway across the top of his beak. Position it on his face as before. Carefully sort of stab it on, working all the way round to make sure it's neatly attached. And in the same way you did with the yellow duck, you just want to blend out that harsh drawing around his bill by just adding some tufts of yellow wool and just stabbing those in place just to soften that edge. Once you've got the eyes in place, you can start by adding some detail and the markings of the duck. So he has a little stripe that goes from his bill through his eye and just towards the back of his head. So if you make a thin strip of wool and just starting from his beak, stab over the eye and out beyond. Just get the angle that you're happy with. You can always pull some fibres off if you've added too much. Do the same on the other side. Make sure that they're going in the same sort of directions and angles, and just work them in. Next, you want to tuft up a little more wool, and you want to add a stripe that goes from the middle of his bill right up over the top of his head, almost like a little toupee on the top of his head. And then in the same way you did with the yellow duckling, you just want to take a tiny tuft of the eggshell wool, just lay it over the top of his eyeball, and then just use the tip of the needle just to push the fibres in and around the eyeball, and they'll just create a nice little outline, just defining the eye and just making it stand out against that dark wool that you've placed in there. Once you've done both eyes, you can just start putting some wool down the back of his body. So join onto where you finished at the back of the head. So you take it all the way down his back to the tip of his tail. This doesn't need to be too thick a layer. It can be nice and fine. It doesn't matter if you see patches of the colour coming through, because when you use the reverse needle, it will pull the fibres, the yellow fibres, through the dark. So it will look patchy anyway. When you're happy that all the dark brown wool is on nicely, you can add a little tuft of pale eggshell to his front of his chest. And again, when you're using the reverse needle, you get a nice sort of mottled tones of colour coming through, which is really nice. So when you're happy with his body, you can make his feet and legs. They're made exactly the same way as you made the orange ones, but this time you're going to use the mink wool, which is sort of pinky grey colour, but they're made exactly the same way. Join them together at the top and cut a slit in the base of your model. And then you can push the legs up inside the model. Make sure they go in far enough. And when you're happy they're in and they're the right length, you can pad out the gap that you had before. And then again, once you're happy that the legs are in and nice and secure, you can just cover up that join with another little pad of the eggshell wool. So once you're happy with his shape and his legs, now's the time to fluff him up. So same process as before, just hold the model nice and firmly and gently pull all over the model with your reverse green tipped needle. And as you can see, it pulls some of the yellow fibres up through the brown and the cream, and you get this lovely sort of mottled texture. And then when you're happy that you've pulled enough fluff through, you can just give him a little trim. I find it helps going in at an angle rather than flat. If you go in straight with the scissors, you can sometimes get a very blunt, very even texture. But if you go in at an angle, a bit like you could go when you go to the hairdressers, you get like a nice feathered effect. And I hope you enjoyed making your fuzzy ducklings, and do check out all our other kits available on our website.